Hey everybody, Mike Guglielmi, Sons of a Pitch Soccer Podcast. Tonight, episode 171. We discuss lots of transfer rumors, CBA negotiations, a little bit about the Club World Cup, and much, much more on this episode of Sons of a Pitch Soccer Podcast.
Hey, soccer fans, and welcome to another episode of the Sons of a Pitch, an American Soccer Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Nick Pateras, alongside my good friend and fellow host, Mike Guglielmi. And Mike, I'm ready to talk some soccer, but how are you feeling today, my friend?
Hey, I'm doing good, man. It's been a hell of a day, very long day, but we're here to finally talk some soccer, and just walked in the door a few minutes ago.
Well, busy day for you, man. But I'm glad we get to unwind a little bit. There is a lot going on around the American soccer landscape. So without further ado, let's dive right in to the biggest news in Major League Soccer, in the MLS. The MLS and the MLS Players Association have agreed on terms to extend the collective bargaining agreement. There will be no lockout. There will be no strike. There will be no work stoppage. Pick your phrase. We are going to have soccer. Kickoff is what, April 3rd? That's when the regular season starts, right?
That's what they say.
And we got preseason coming up in just 2 short weeks. Jay Jardim, thanks for jumping on and joining us here, man. I hope you're as excited as we are that they finally got this collective bargaining agreement worked out. So let's dive into a little bit. Based on the prior terms, they had to have everything ironed out by midnight Friday. And while that didn't happen, the league did grant an extension because they had made significant progress. And I've been trying to put notes together on this all day, but we keep getting new updates and we keep getting changes and new things come in. That's how fast and how recent these things have occurred. But really what it comes down to is that this agreement will cover the next 7 years of MLS, 2021 season through the 2027 season, and it has been approved by the MLSPA. We're still waiting on full details, but we can give you a lot of what we know already here. The biggest thing, kind of the takeaway here, Mike, is that it runs through 2027. That means all that great revenue that they get from the 2026 World Cup might be off the table. It might have already been spent, might have already been allocated elsewhere. Do you think, Mike, this is a win for the league or for the Players Association, or was this just kind of like a toss-up here in the fact that the agreement runs past the World Cup? You think maybe this was something that just us pundits were quite kind of harping on when really it didn't affect the bargaining at all? What do you think?
I don't think it affected the bargaining at all. I think I think the reason for that is because they don't want any more nastiness going on before the World Cup, right? I think we're at that kind of that gray zone of 5 years or so. So if you do a 5-year agreement, that means it's going to run out at the end of or the beginning of 2026. You don't want to be like 3 months out from a World Cup and you're going through a work stoppage or something like that, right? So makes sense to put it off till after afterwards. That's kind of what I take from the date, and we've already seen that MLS has no problem with pulling the force majeure clause out to renegotiate things. So that means for both sides, that's now done. Like the players can pull out too if they want to at any point, really. Obviously not for anything, but anything that usually wouldn't qualify as that. Now there's precedence that says, hey, you can pull out because of this. So it could happen. I think that door's been opened, and so I think that's the main thing. Get it outside of 2026 so that that's done with, and we don't have any nasty issues before the World Cup.
Right, and I think the main thing is that both sides were trying to get done was we're still going to have a league in 2021, and we're still going to have a league past 2021. Whatever your take is on the actual dollar amount, the MLS stood to lose up to $1 billion projected, right? Obviously, some of those numbers are probably a little skewed. Mike, you know how that goes, Mr. Accountant. But really, the point is it got done. And the players are going to get 100% of their salaries in 2021. Now, the flip side to that, and here's the compromise, is that the raises to the minimum salary requirements and to the salary cap are not going to occur as quickly as they were originally negotiated for. But here's some of the big things, Mike. Free agency. Now, everyone talks about salary caps and player salaries and guaranteed money and all this sort of thing. This was actually a big issue for the Players Association, was an expanded free agency. And this is going to be one of the first things that gets implemented. So as per MLSsoccer.com, 2-year extension with expanded free agency. So the existing agreement, again, will run through 2027. The first 32 seasons of MLS will not have a work stoppage. So that's great. But here's where it really kicks into gear here. Starting in 2026, any player 24 years old and older with at least 4 years MLS service can become a free agent within the MLS, providing the players at an earlier stage of their careers with opportunities to negotiate with and move to different MLS clubs. So you get to be a free agent sooner in your career than under prior CBAs. I think you had to have something like 6 to 8 years, depending on veteran status versus, young MLS type players. So, Mike, do you see this then as a big win for the players, a big win for the league, a both? Like, what are you thinking about this particular bargaining point here?
Hey, with that bargaining point, that is obviously a win for the players to get that age down to 24 with 4 years of experience. That means a guy who came in at 22 when he turns 26, he's eligible. It definitely is going to open up the free agency pool a lot more. And what we've seen is the free agency, just because of free agency, it drives the players' salaries up. I mean, you look at some of these guys, you look at some of the salaries and you're like, wow, like Drew Moore a couple of years ago was making over $300,000 with Toronto FC and he wasn't even playing. You look, then he went free agency over to the Rapids, right? So he was going to be making close to that, if not more. So that drives up their salaries big time. So that is a huge win for the players on that one.
Right. So here, Mike, then let's look at player compensation. This is the next biggest thing and the one that everyone likes to harp on: salaries, salary caps, GAM and TAM. So next year the teams get $4.9 million to spend on salary, about $1.5 million in GAM, $2.8 million in TAM, roughly calculated $9.23 million ish to spend on your roster, depending on how you work it, depending on what clauses and roster spots you take advantage of. Now that just ticks up a little bit for 2022. The salary doesn't go up. Your GAM goes up $100,000. Fast forward now to 2027, your total available to spend on the roster goes from $9.3 million to $13 million. So over the next 7 seasons, the teams are going to get $4 million more of spending over salary, GAM, and TAM, the different allocation money that the team can spend. I think that's pretty good. Mike, again, you're the accountant. You've worked with big budgets. You've worked with corporations, political units, all this stuff. For a league like the MLS to add $4 million in roster expenditures over the next 7 years, did they do enough? Did they not go far enough with the money? What's your take on the dollar spending here?
You got to look at it from both sides. Now, as an accountant and a budget specialist, so to say, I think it's a reasonable figure. As a soccer fan and as a MLS enthusiast, I think it's not enough. They need to put in more money to these rosters and these salary caps. You know me, I'm a proponent for completely getting rid of the salary cap.
Oh yes,
but that's not realistic. Okay, not going to happen in MLS right now. So there needs to be a happy medium, and for me, it's not enough. $4 million over 6 to 7 years is not enough. Given where the current status is, that's close to almost doubling it, right? Because right now, what's the current salary cap this season was what, $5 million?
Yep, just underneath.
So, right, so you're going up almost double, right, over the next 5 to 6 years. Which, yes, that helps, but to me, it's not enough. I think if this league wants to be taken seriously, they need to be in the $20 million a year mark. To be able to compete with teams like Mexico, to be able to compete with teams outside of Mexico if they were to ever go to the Club World Cup,
sure.
Which we'll talk about later with Tigres, right? So they need to do a little bit more. I get that it was a reasonable figure for
25% over 7 years. That's not Terrible, right?
See, I was thinking it was closer to 50. I was thinking like 40%. If it was 40%, then that would make a little bit more sense. If it's 25%, that's not even close to enough. Then the players got screwed on that one. So that's, not good.
Well, we do see over the next 7 years an increase of the most a player can be charged against the salary cap too, going up from just over 600,000 to almost 900,000. So you're seeing a bump up in the high end of things. We talked about the free agency, and there's a lot more details there. One thing I didn't see is the young DPs. We haven't seen if that is still going to be something in this new collective bargaining agreement. It was a big point in the initial negotiations because you'll get your 3 DPs and then you can get a young DP as well to help bolster your roster, to pay some of those players to guarantee that they stay with your team for more than just a season, a rental, a loan, whatever you want to call it. So something to keep your eye out there. The one other thing, Mike, and I don't know if you heard anything more about travel. That was a big issue going into this one is charter flights. Will teams be required to increase the number of charter flights that they give during regular season? Will they be mandated to have charter flights for all playoff games? I don't think that has changed at all, especially the fact that how are these teams going to travel internationally as well as cross-continental travel with COVID restrictions and FAA restrictions on all these sorts of things. So have you heard anything as far as what travel negotiations have taken place?
I have not, and my assumption is that it's probably going to be exactly the same then across the board for whatever it was before, before the force majeure clause, whatever the last CBA was. My guess is it's probably similar to that.
I'd be with you on that one. That sounds right to me. And we get a great question here. Ray Orozco. Hey, thanks for jumping on, Ray. It's great to see you. I know you often send us some of those Facebook messages, Twitter messages. Great to have you joining us live. And Ray says, I would really like to know what the average budgets were in global competitors in the marketplace, particularly in Asia, which is a fairly new league like the MLS. So I haven't really dug into any numbers there, but we do know, looking at the Chinese league, that China, I don't think they have a salary cap, or if they do, it's a pretty high one, or they have a similar DP rule to the US, because they have just been pretty much printing money, just throwing outlandish amounts of money at some of these big name players just to generate an interest in their league. Now, they do have certain roster restrictions where you have to have so many Chinese national players or national eligible players on your roster. So that does put some restrictions in place. But you know what, man? We saw it in the Club World Cup. The South Korean team, the Tigers of Busan, I think it is, they've got some top-notch talent on that team. I don't know if they are competing to the level of the MLS with their budgets, but really, I guess it all depends on kind of what league that you're looking at. China's throwing money around. It certainly seems. South Korea seems to be a little more stable. Then you've got other leagues like in Vietnam or the Philippines or in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, they've been buying up MLS players over the last 3-4 months, throwing ridiculous sums of money, even going back to when Jovinko got sold over to Al Hilal there. So you are starting to see some countries like China and Saudi Arabia throw money around, but I think the more norm of some of these Asian marketplaces is to have certain restrictions like the MLS. But again, that's just my speculation. I haven't done my homework on it. I'm no expert in Asian Confederation club teams. So, Mike, you got anything else that you want to add to answer Ray's question?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to look up what the averages are in the AFC, right? Because it's hard to judge. You got the Chinese Super League, you've got like the Saudi Arabian League, and then you've got the Egyptian League, or the Israeli League, or some of these that you're not. So obviously you're going to have like maybe $1 million a year in the Israeli League in salaries, and you're going to have $50 million a year in the Chinese Super League, right? So you're going to have these differences. So obviously you can't say, well, according to looking at the Chinese Super League, this is how we stand. To see an average through the Asian Football Confederation would be interesting. But Ray says that this new CBA ensures that we will not catch global competitors like the J League and the MX, Mexico, Liga MX, Argentina, and Brazil. Agreed. This puts, when you look at these type of figures over 7 years, bringing up a 25 to 40%, depending on what the exact number would be, an increase in salaries over 7 years. You are correct, Raymond. This will not put MLS on the same playing field as League MX. It will not put them, definitely not the same as Argentina or Brazil. The league, I think the league was on this kind of like rocket trajectory. We say rocket because look at the growth over 25 years.
We went from nothing to where we are in
exactly
one generation, essentially.
Right. Now that doesn't happen in the English Premier League, right? It took 90 years, obviously maybe not that long, but 50, 60, 70, 80 years to get there. So they were on this like rocket trajectory, and then all of a sudden COVID happened, and now it's kind of like, I think this kind of resets it and says, all right, well, we wanted to be here by a certain time, but that's not feasible anymore. We got to step it back a little bit, and that's maybe the way they're looking at it. But yeah, we're not going to be able to compete with these guys come the end of this deal, which does suck. But maybe that's what the necessity was, based between the owners and the players and whatnot, to get this to come through. So.
Absolutely, Mike. Two quick thoughts, and then we will move on to our next MLS segment, MLS transfers. Number one, there's still kind of that ghost of the NASL in the background there, right? Where the league that folded, and there's still those ghosts of the Tampa Bay Mutiny and Miami Fusion, right? Chivas, even more recently, clubs that had to fold because of financial issues. So there's still a little bit of those ghosts where the MLS is like, we need to make sure our league is viable. And right now, like we're seeing with COVID, a huge chunk of their revenues are game day revenues, concessions, souvenirs, ticket sales, all that sort of thing. We don't have giant TV mega deals like some of these baseball teams, or even college sports for that instance. The amateur student athletes, like we don't even have those mega deals for TV rights yet. So until we get to that point, they're always going to be very, very cautious. And so what the league wanted to accomplish by 2025, now they're getting it done by 2027. And maybe there's some other negotiations that take place prior to that. It's all, contracts are only as good as the paper they're written on. You can always demand to renegotiate. We see it all the time. And if you have a halfway decent lawyer, you'll be able to make a point. So no, that is not me soliciting for a job. Major League Soccer Players Association, if you're listening, so am I. But hey, that to me, that's what it is. You've got the ghosts of wanting to have a stable league, and you need to make sure that you're going to get that TV deal in 5 years, 7 years, whenever the rights come up for renegotiation. And then, then you're just printing money like some of these other major leagues. So that's kind of my final thought on everything, collective bargaining, MLSPA, Major League Soccer owners, and all that sort of thing. So let's get in now to what we're going to see on the field now that we know we're going to have a season. And there have been a lot of transfers that have been taking place. And I expect a lot more now that we have a guaranteed start date and that we've got a 2021 season. So let me throw a couple of rumors out here, just because I think they're so ridiculous we have to mention them, and then we'll get into some actual player signings. So here's the two rumors. FC Cincinnati wants to bring back Pity Martinez to the MLS. The former Atlanta United player who was all hype and no production. And then Miami wants to sign Stoke City defender Shawcross from the EPL team there. Mike, are you going to give any credit to Pity Martinez coming back to Cincinnati, or Inter Miami signing probably one of the better Premier League defenders?
Depends on who the coach is for Pity Martinez, 1. 2, yes, I will, because he was seeming to pull it together a little bit towards the end of his tenure. He was having some good games. He started the season off very well, and then all of a sudden he was gone. And I think that was Atlanta management. They got the offer in, and they're like, all right, well, yeah, he's doing good. That's why we got the offer. And we can either hope that he stays good, or we can just recoup now and get out of it. And they chose recoup and get out of it. So I think he's a good player. He can definitely help Cincinnati. Shit, I could probably help Cincinnati. But, I think he's a good player, and he just has to have the right system. I think he came in to that Frank DeBoer mess, and that locker room was falling apart, and it was kind of he just never really got off on the right foot. So I think he has that MLS experience. He knows what to deal with. The transition period's already done. I'd take a flyer on him. If TFC was to sign him a 1-year deal right now, I'd be fine with that.
All right. Well, there you go. So now for the actual done deals, things that have been reported as finalized. 3 signings here, and then Mike, you can kind of pick and choose what you want to talk about. Portland Timbers extend Eric Williamson, 23-year-old midfielder, 3 goals, 5 assists last season, up and coming player, getting consistent starting minutes, a guy that really kind of gelled into their system, a guy they could rely on, and a guy who was relatively under the radar from a national team perspective, and also kind of getting some youth national team looks as well, if not some senior team looks. So we've got Portland Timbers shoring up their midfield. We've got DC United kind of adding some depth to their defense, signing Michael DeShields, their super draft pick. And then Austin FC, this was an interesting move for me here, Mike. Austin FC signs Aaron Schoenfeld, free agent signing. He was last with Minnesota United. So those are 3 of kind of the signings that stood out to me recently. Mike, what stands out to you about those particular signings?
For me, I think is Eric Williamson is probably the most important one. And hey, look at that. Right as we start talking about Eric Williamson, Rocky does it all has joined us. Rocky, how you doing, my man? Thanks for hanging out. He's their up and coming star, man. I don't know if I'd say, he's not. I don't think he's ever going to become a superstar in the league, but he's got good talent. He's definitely a big pickup, a good signing there for the Timbers to extend Williamson. That's number 1. Number 2, Aaron Schoenfeld to Austin FC. Obviously, they see something in it in this guy. He didn't really do much with Minnesota. I didn't think he was any good, but it'd be interesting to see what they ended up signing the guy for, just to kind of be that depth piece, right? Like a kind of is similar to like a Patrick Mullins with TFC, just somebody to bring off the bench, maybe if there's injuries, that kind of stuff. Okay. And the DC United signing, I know nothing about that guy.
Well, he is their super draft pick, number 5 overall pick. Based on his statistics, he's listed as a defender or a midfielder, but he's more of a defensive midfielder, not a lot of showing up on the score sheet. He actually went under contract with New England Revolution 2 last year, but continued to play for Wake Forest. His college team never actually appeared with the Revs' second team there. So this is, to me, it's a depth move. Hopefully he can turn into a starter, as we usually see those top 5 super draft picks pretty regularly end up being regular MLS starters for 4 or 5 seasons. What's interesting to note about Michael DeShields here is he is from Trinidad and Tobago. So he is eligible for the U.S. and TNT, has not cap tied yet, and in the U.S.'s last friendly against Trinidad, he actually was in camp with Trinidad. Did not make the final roster, but was in camp with them. So this guy is at least on the radar of one national team, and playing at Wake Forest definitely ups his stock a little bit. Mike, real quick here, I just pulled some stuff up on Eric Williamson. I thought maybe he was another super draft pick, but I don't see that in my notes. But a couple trivia things about Eric Williamson. He almost was linked with a move to Schalke a couple of years back, supposedly. Schalke never made an offer. In the personal trivia here, at least on Wikipedia, it says Eric Williamson is the cousin of Queen Latifah, the singer, actress, and producer. So there you go. There's your Eric Williamson trivia. Maybe we'll start to see Queen Latifah show up at a game. Maybe she gets into Portland Timbers ownership like a lot of these celebrities are starting to do. She's got a new show. She's got some money coming in. So maybe we'll start to see that branching out.
Wow.
Yeah, and totally Schoenfeld's just a depth signing for the Loons there. He's had 5 seasons in the MLS, 17 starts, 6 goals in 5 years. Not what you want in a striker. So I wonder if he's more of just kind of a link-up kind of play guy, not a pure striker. Like, I don't know much about his game, especially since he's not playing in the MLS, even when he's been here 5 years. But totally just a depth piece. I think for Austin FC, get a little of that veteran presence. They've got a decent enough roster where I don't expect Schoenfeld to start. So that's our 3 kind of big signings here, Mike. You want to move into some Montreal news?
Sure.
I know how much you love Montreal. The Snowflakes.
Oh yeah, the Snowflakes. I think that is a good nickname for them.
All right. Well then, all politics aside, Montreal has made a trio of signings recently. 2 players on loan: Ahmed Hamdi from Egyptian club El Guna and Joaquin Torres from Newell's Old Boys down in Argentina. Those are their loan signings, a couple of midfielders. And then they actually signed under contract Norway striker Bjorn Johnsen from Ulsan Hyundai of the Club World Cup quarterfinals, I believe. So he actually brings some statistics here. He's got 11 goals and 33 appearances for Ulsan Hyundai. He actually has 16 caps for the Norwegian national team. Meanwhile, Ahmed Hamdi came up with the top Egyptian youth team, then gets loaned out to El Guna, kind of a mid-table Egyptian team. Only 23 years old. He's turning 23 this week. Similarly, Joaquin Torres with Newell's Old Boys in Argentina. He's been with them in one form or another his entire career. He had a quick loan spell to Greece. Got to throw that in there, of course. Greek connection every episode.
There you go.
But they've been really busy, right? You got to remember, they get Jordi Mihailovic from the Fire. They got Kamal Miller and Kiki Struna via other trades. Who else did they sign this offseason? They brought in a Nigerian youth international, Sunusi Ibrahim. Do we need to take Montreal seriously in the Eastern Conference, Mike? They're really turning over their roster in Thierry Henry's second year. And you're laughing. Okay, so I already know your answer, but go ahead, explain it.
No, you don't, because again, I'll say it again, and for everybody who's with me in the playoffs and before that and listened to our show knows that I think Thierry Henry is a shit coach. No, it doesn't matter. These guys are unproven. The only ones that we know anything about are the guys they brought from MLS: Jordi Mihailovic, Kamal Miller, Kiki Struna. But those aren't game-breaking trades. Maybe Jordi Mihailovic on a good day, on his best day, is a good piece for that club. Kamal Miller, depth signing. Same thing with Struna. And these guys, we know nothing about these guys. Okay, Joaquin Torres sounds probably like the best signing here. Interesting note: Bjorn Johnson was born in New York City, so he is American, and to an American and a Norwegian mother or something like that. So, interesting little fun fact for him. But these guys they're bringing in, we know nothing about it. So now you look at what they've done for their clubs. The only thing, Newell's Old Boys is a good club in Argentina,
historic Argentine club.
Yeah, but some of these other ones, we know nothing about this. There's no way you can judge it to say, yes, this is going to be huge for Montreal, just based off of this, right? I mean, there's nothing. There's nothing. I can't say, yes, this team's going to be good based off of that information. We know nothing. And again, there's always that period where you're trying to get things pulled together as a team. And when you've got 12 new guys in a roster, it's going to be hard to say, get things rolling right away. It's going to take
hard for a veteran coach, let alone Thierry Henry.
Exactly. So yeah, no, I see this, let's see what things look like in July. If Montreal's, in the top 3, top 4 of the table and consistent, then yeah, let's see. And let's see what we're working with them. But right now, no, there's no clue on how this is going to perform. So I'm going to go with no.
All right. Well, there you have it, everybody. Mike, not pleased with Montreal. Go figure. Mike, not high on the Snowflakes.
Yep. We got a few more Snowflakes, though. And you say, it's nothing political. It's about political. It's not political at all. It's the fact that their logo looks like a freaking snowflake.
Oh, I know.
Me up. Like I did. There's other ones out there I won't get into of what it looks like, but think about it for a minute. When you look at it, you can probably figure it out.
I've heard those too. If anyone watched the old sitcom Community when they had to design their school's flag, that's very similar to the new Montreal logo. If anyone gets that reference, gosh. A few more signings to touch on, and then we're going to get into a little USMNT roster news that came out recently. Atlanta have re-signed forward Cubo Torres. Orlando City signed defender Jonathan Suarez on loan from Querétaro in Liga MX. and Kansas City signs French center back Nicolas Isimat-Mirin. The Kubo Torres signing kind of, I don't know how I feel about it, Mike. Like, I feel like there's a lot on his shoulders as kind of being a veteran guy, a guy they like. Joseph is still coming back from injury, but he scores about every other game if you look at his full MLS career, but he only had 13 appearances last season for Atlanta. So do you think you're going to see more of him this season? Carlos Bocanegra made some comments, and it looks like he's just there to be a veteran presence in the locker room. Do you think the same way Bocanegra does?
Yes. He didn't produce at all. In that 13 games that he was there last season, but nobody was producing with that roster and that team. So yes, he had a decent season with the Dynamo with 14 goals in 2017 before he went back down to Mexico. He's just not. Yeah, he never really took off in MLS. He had a good season, then he did nothing, and then he had a good season, and then he left and didn't do anything, and then came back and didn't do anything. So I'm thinking, yeah, it's more of a depth piece. Maybe try and help rest Joseph when he does come back if they're playing teams that they can afford to rest Joseph for, which I don't think that's going to be the case. Depends what some of their other signings look like. But yeah, not much on Kubo Torres. I mean, he's a good piece, but hopefully he's not on, he's not definitely not on DP money with Atlanta.
Sure.
Hopefully not too much TAM either, because he's not going to produce too much.
And he's not a guy you want to rely on to win games. That's for
right.
Sure. So looking at these other two moves, the Kansas City move, I think it's a really good move. Just kind of looking up the profile for Nicolas Isimat-Mirin. The guy has played in like over 200 some club games throughout Europe, like in the Eredivisie and Ligue 1 in France. This guy's got tons of experience, and they signed him for a 2-year deal with a club option third year. He's plug and play. He's 29. They're going to be able to say, okay, you're going to now start on day one for us, and we're going to help shore up that back line. So I think that's a great move for Kansas City. Meanwhile, Orlando City picks up a new defender on loan. What's interesting to me about signing Jonathan Suarez is that he's a dual national, U.S., Mexico, I believe, eligibility. He's played for the U.S. youth national team. He's only 24 years old, or at least will be by the time the season starts. 14 appearances in Liga MX last year. I think that was his first full season in Liga MX, playing in lower divisions in Mexico prior. I kind of want to keep an eye on him from a national team perspective as much as I do Orlando City needs better defenders right now if they're going to compete in the East. So with that, Mike, any thoughts on Jonathan Suarez, Nicolas Isimat-Mirin? We got to come up with a nickname for that guy. That's going to be a mouthful today if we're doing Sporting Kansas City recaps. Anything on them?
Just the guy for Orlando there from Querétaro. It's a good signing. Anybody you're bringing in from League MX is a good signing. It's definitely going to help Orlando for sure. And speaking of Orlando, there have been some rumors about apparently Orlando have made an offer for Alexander Pato from the former Brazil and AC Milan star who was, God, I mean, this was like 6 years ago. I don't even know where this guy's been.
Barely remember that name.
Yeah, so he was like supposed to be the next big thing. He's 31 now, and he was like 17. He scored a goal at the 2006 Club World Cup and broke Pele's record for the youngest goal scorer at a FIFA event, and he was 17. He went on played for AC Milan, his big money signing. He did okay there. I mean, it wasn't horrible. Went over to Chelsea and he's just falling apart. So Orlando City, they have that. They love that Brazilian flair, and they, I guess they put an offer for him. So that's a little more interesting to me than Jonathan Suarez. But again, that's a good signing for Orlando City.
Excellent. Well, with that, Mike, do we have any housekeeping before we move into the second half of the show here? I just kind of want to remind all of our viewers and listeners, you can find us all over social media, on Twitter at SOPSoccer, on YouTube at Sons of a Pitch Soccer, Facebook, Sons of a Pitch Soccer, our website, go figure, sonsofapitchsoccer.com, as well as we're on all the major podcasting platforms. So if you can't watch us on YouTube or follow us on Facebook, make sure you download the Sons of a Pitch, an American Soccer podcast on Amazon, iTunes, Google, Stitcher, Spotify, Deezer. There's a few other oddly named things out there as well that you can find us on. And if you want to support the show and continue to grow the conversation of soccer here in the United States, you can find us on the Cash App, $SOPSoccer, our referral code FRQWGRS. And you know what? Use that referral code. If you send us $5 with that referral code, you get $10. So you're making $5 free. Piece of cake. Easy. It's free money, right? And everybody wants free money in this day and age. You can take that $5, then you can go over to Robinhood and invest that in a random stock that's going to take off next, right? We're all here to make money and talk soccer. That's what this is. So
there you go.
So with that housekeeping out of the way, let's slide into some United States men's national team talk here. Always popular. Got a busy year for the United States. They've got Nations League and the Gold Cup this summer. They've got the Olympics this summer or fall, depending on when Tokyo gets their act together. And then we've got World Cup qualifying this fall. I'm pretty sure there's another competition in there somewhere, Mike. It just escapes me right now. But the U.S. has at least 4 major competitions to play, and you are not going to get the same roster and lineup for every single one of those. Now, Greg Berhalter has said there's probably going to be 30 to 40 guys that are going to get caps this year. That's insane.
That is.
But he also came out and said, look, I'm not going to play Pulisic in the Gold Cup and the Nations League. So that suggests to me we're going to get 2 rosters. One for the Nations League, one for the Gold Cup, and then take your best 11, and that's going to be your World Cup qualifying roster. Do you think that that's how it's going to go? And if so, who do you expect to play on each roster?
I mean, if he's coming out and saying it, that's ridiculous. I mean, that's just stupid. I know we're in this rebuilding mode and we have all this young talent and all this kind of stuff. What's the point of playing a game? It's to win. Stop screwing around and put your best team out there every given chance you have. Come on. You're going to have a different roster for your Nations League games. You're going to have a different roster for Gold Cup. That is ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. Who the hell do you think you are? Brazil, Spain? What are you doing? Okay, maybe Brazil could do that. Maybe because they have so much talent. The United States couldn't qualify for the 2018 World Cup. Get your act together, Greg Berhalter. Play the same damn team and find out what that best 11 is. And it's called competition. Do you know what competition is? It means the guy who's sitting there riding the pine or not getting called up anymore is going to bust his ass and play 10 times better so that he can play in the Gold Cup and the Nations League and the World Cup qualifiers. Oh, but instead he'll just be like, oh, well, I'm on the Nations League team, so I'm going to get my caps. And then the other guy is going to be like, no, come on. This is the most ridiculous crap I've ever heard in my life. Come up with a best 11 and go with it. Create that competition inside the locker room, inside the team, and forge on, man. Go for it. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Okay, Mike. I love the passion. You brought it right there, Mike. You got fired up. You're still hyped up after that Bucks Super Bowl victory. Your boys down in Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
But are you worried at all about putting too many miles on these guys' legs or having them play too many games in a short span, tiring them out before the World Cup qualifying? If you've got a guy like Pulisic or McKennie or Adams, your top players playing in 2 tournaments over the course of June and July and then having to go September, October in World Cup qualifying, does that concern you at all from a health and endurance standpoint?
Nope, you're a professional athlete. Figure it out. You get paid to play a game. Do it. What is the Nations League?
Team, do they?
What is the Nations League? 2 games? A semifinal and a final? Or is it a round robin?
They haven't released the schedule yet, but the Nations League it's group stages, right? You've got
this is like the finals or something, because the group stage is already done and they already had their winners of that, which now go into like the playoff to determine who wins the Nations League, right?
Right. And you have the tiers of each Nations League, and that eventually is going to shake out who qualifies or who gets into World Cup qualifying, that final octagonal. So there is something at stake here, being at the top of the Nations League. But you're right, Mike, that you want to have your best 11, but for me, it's all about World Cup qualifying. Nations League, it's the new thing, and it really isn't going to affect our World Cup qualifying until the 2026 cycle, which we've already automatically qualified for as one of the host nations. And then we've got the Gold Cup, which a lot of people are saying, so what? Like you win the Gold Cup, you go to the Confederations Cup, which is kind of like the warm-up tournament.
Probably isn't even going to exist anymore.
Right. It's typically the warm-up tournament, so the host nation of the World Cup can kind of get some experience hosting a tournament. There's only 6 or 8 teams that go to that, and it's just a real round-robin-y, quick little thing. So why would you want to win the Gold Cup? Just to have that prestige and say, hey, we beat Mexico, Costa Rica, and Honduras again? That we finally are starting to beat Mexico regularly? Well, you know what? If we get to the round of 8 in the World Cup, or if we get to the World Cup semifinals and Mexico doesn't, I think that's bragging rights plenty right there. Or heck, let's win a World Cup, and then you can stick that in Mexico's craw for a long time. So the Gold Cup, I think, is losing a lot of its allure from a trophy standpoint. And right now, the Nations League really doesn't carry a lot of weight with the United States. So for me, get your best 11 ready for World Cup qualifying. If that means you do split, take your 3 best players and put them on the Nations League, and then your next 3 best and put them on the Gold Cup squad so that they can kind of develop the crew around them and maybe see who works best with others, do that. One thing we were talking on social media, on Twitter earlier today, someone said get an MLS team and then get a European team. Have, Pulisic, McKennie, Adams, Musa, Gio, maybe Areola and Morris, if you want to consider them European now. Put them on your Gold Cup team, and then have all your MLS-based players like Zardes, Altidore, if you want to bring back him, and Bradley, who are some, Roldan, Zimmerman, like those guys. Have your MLS-based team play in the Nations League. Regardless, you should still be a top 4 nation in either one of these tournaments. Doesn't matter who plays from the U.S., but seriously, just get your best 11 set for World Cup qualifying, because that's what means the most right now to every U.S. soccer fan. Get ready for World Cup qualifying.
Totally. I totally agree with you there. But for me, how do you find that best 11? We've been screwing around with this now for 2 years. Hey, here's an MLS-based group. Here's a European-based group. Here's something guys. Right. You've had enough time to figure that out. Now you take your guys and you think, as coach, you get to decide this. Imagine that. You are the leader of this group. You get to decide what that best 11 is. So you just sit there and you think in your little bald head, you say, hey, I think the best striker is Josie Altidore. I think the best winger is Christian Pulisic. I think the best number, and go through it that way. Mm-hmm. And then put it out there, see what happens. And guess what? You might go into the Nations League and get fucking crushed. And then you go, oh, wait a minute. Maybe we got to reset this a little bit. And then you pull back and you say, okay, well, let's look at this, or let's look at that. Let's take this guy instead of Altidore. Oh, look, Altidore got hurt again. So we can't, let's pick somebody else. And that's how you build your best 11, and the competition, it starts to rise up. That's how you get your roster ready, and you use Nations League and Gold Cup that way to get your best 11 set for the World Cup qualifying. Because you're right, that's all that matters. I don't care about the Gold Cup. If they come in 8th in the Gold Cup, it makes no difference to me. That it's stupid. That whole competition is a waste of time. Now, Nations League, kind of the same thing. It's just a created competition. Yes, there has more of an idea to it, but I don't know. Forget about it.
It'll be very important, but not for the next 3 years. That's for sure.
Right. So yeah, just get it out of here and let's focus on World Cup qualifying, and let's use these games to pick your best 11 for the World Cup qualifying. It's that simple.
All right, I'm not even going to ask you how you feel about putting together a U23 team for the Olympics, but I was lobbying for like an attorney spot with with the league's legal team here, Mike. It seems like you're lobbying for Ernie Stewart's job here to be the next GM of U.S. Soccer and figure all this stuff out. That's an impassionate and well thought out speech.
Nothing pisses me off more than seeing a bunch of wasted time, and that's exactly what this is. I mean, this process started the day after they didn't qualify for 2018.
Yep.
And look at how long it took them to get a coach. Look at how long it took them to decide. Now, I get there's a lot of young talent that wouldn't have reached the point it is today at that time, but it's just been messing around, screwing around for too long. It's been 3+ years. Get on with it. Now we're here. We're a few months away from it. It's going. Next thing you know, we're going to be there. So let's focus on doing the right thing and hopefully get qualified for the World Cup like we should be.
For sure. And as Jason Jardim says, I think both Canada and the U.S. want to qualify for 2022, but the end goal is to be 100% ready for 2026. Very good point. Both teams want to make sure that they're advancing out of their group stages during that World Cup, which I think they should at that point. And then both of them want to make deep runs into the knockout round. So great comment there, Jay. And getting back to a comment from Luis, see you in Chicago later in the year. Mike, this is a great segue into our final topic. Are you happy with Tigres being in the Club World Cup final here, the first CONCACAF team to ever get to the finals? How you feeling, buddy?
Hey, that's great. I mean, I'm rooting for Tigres all day long. I hope they can. I think they give the best game to Bayern Munich, and they deserve to be there. Are they going to be able to? Do I expect them to win? No. Do I think it could happen? Yes. 90 minutes, anything can happen in 90 minutes, especially with Tigres and the talent that they have. They could get lucky. Bayern could have a bad day, and they could get it done. So I'm happy about it. I'm glad that they've made it this far, and it shows because that team's been they've kind of set themselves apart in Mexico. I feel like to be that club. To be like, yes, we are the best team here. We're going to spend the most money. We want to be on that world stage. Now they finally get the opportunity, and they're proving it. And they pulled off a great victory over a Brazilian league team, and that's fantastic. So I'm happy about it. Again, it's not my tried and trues right here. I love TFC like crazy, and I would be jumping out of. I'd be just playing in the snow outside if they were facing Bayern Munich in the World Cup final, or Club World Cup final. But Tigres, I'm happy about it, and hopefully they'll do good. They'll put a good showing on. At least only lose by 1 or 2.
There you go, Mike. Well, the way Bayern Munich played today against Al Ahly, the African qualifier out of Egypt, Bayern Munich dominated that game in the first half. Only were able to find the back of the net once. So it all went according to Al Ahly's game plan. They came out in the second half very strong and almost got a couple of themselves. Bayern Munich eventually gets the second goal and finishes that game with a 2-0 win. So, yeah, I expect the same thing. Bayern should win that game. They should win it fairly handily. But at the same time, it's 90 minutes. It's Tigres. And here's the interesting thing, though, Mike. Tigres, again, the first CONCACAF team to get to the Club World Cup finals. They beat Ulsan of South Korea 2-1, the matchup of the two Tigers. Gignac gets those 2 goals. Then they beat Palmeiras, the top club in Brazil, 1-0 yesterday. Gignac gets that goal. So he scored all 3 of the Tigres' goals, and now they get to go up against Bayern Munich, and that is going to be something to see. I can't wait to watch it this Thursday, noon Central Time. The other thing, we've kind of, I mean American soccer, not just you and I, but American soccer says, Mexico, you want to think you're hot stuff from a national team level and in a club level, but the only thing you've ever done is beat the United States and MLS clubs. That's your biggest accomplishment. If Tigres goes on and wins the Club World Cup, having to have beaten Palmeiras and Bayern Munich, I think that's a huge accomplishment, and I think people are going to have to start looking at Liga MX a little bit differently and giving them a little bit more respect on a national stage. And maybe that makes their national team perform a little bit better, because we know that Mexican nationals prefer to stay in Liga MX than go abroad. Whereas we see here in the United States, our top players are playing in Germany, Europe, obviously, Germany, France, Italy, and England, right? And Spain. So that it adds more to that dynamic between developing U.S. talent and developing Mexican talent. So something else there. We also got one other comment. We're sticking international here for a minute from Father Chris. Why not talk about how Man U choked against Everton? Yes, thank you. That's my brother-in-law, the big Red Devils fan, and I predicted a 2-2 draw on that game and ended up a 3-3 draw after Man United gave up, or Man United was up 2-0 at halftime, ended up drawing 3-3. So Everton steals a point at Old Trafford. Man United scratching their heads, still in fairly good shape in the standings, but Everton love their road form, moving on up the table in EPL there. So that's for you, brother. Anyway, Mike, that's really everything that I wanted to cover tonight. We're approaching the hour mark here. MLS, collective bargaining, transfers, USMNT, little international club flavor here, Mike. Anything else you want to add? Otherwise, feel free, bring us home, my friend.
Yeah, it's getting closer to being exciting, right? We're almost at the season. We know we're going to have a season now, so that's exciting. Then we know that it's coming up starting in the beginning of April. So we've got about another month and a half to 2 months until this starts. So at least now there's some, I can't wait till the schedule comes out. So at least then there's like that somewhat of a finality to it. I don't know, but excited about that. Overall, lots of stuff to talk about here tonight. Touching on the international stuff. I mean, Nick and I were talking before the game. We should maybe do a live for the Club World Cup final. I don't know. Maybe we will if we can coordinate schedules and I can take the day off there and do something out there. But that other than that, not really anything else to talk about. Jay Jardim comes in on the chat and says, "Mike, you got any TFC news? The background, the hat. I thought you were going to break some news." Yeah, definitely don't have anything on TFC, man. I don't know what the hell they're doing. It is just radio silent out there in TFC land. There, every once in a while, you get a little bit of the Bora headlines. I think that's how you say his name, Bora, that maybe he's coming, but absolutely nothing. I mean, it's just been dead silent. There's no rumors. There's no nothing. I don't know what the hell's going on. So hopefully things will start dropping again. You kind of saw that with Montreal. There was nothing with Montreal there, and all of a sudden they signed like 8 guys in like 3 days. So we'll see. Hopefully, I mean, training camps are going to get underway in a couple of weeks. So it's time to get over there and figure it out. But overall, oh, look, there's my mother-in-law. We have all of our in-laws joining the show on Facebook. Bobby Michael from Montgomery, Alabama. How you doing, Bobby? Hope you guys are driving safe. Stay south. It's nasty up here. We just keep getting more and more and more snow. And as well, Jan Stepp, thanks for coming on. And as he says, everybody hit that like button down below. And apparently it's lunchtime there where Jan Stepp is already. So, man. Good stuff. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for joining everybody tonight. We'll see you guys very soon. We'll be dropping our 2006 World Cup Time Machine episode either Thursday or Friday. And Jay, just to let you know, so I just got my new hat, $7.99 on Fanatics right now on clearance. So I bought 2. I put one to just put, and if I ever get a man cave again once my kids are older, I'll put that somewhere nice and special. And then got one to wear and literally walked in the door like 3 minutes before recording, so I couldn't even find my SOP hoodie. So I'm like gray and gray. It works. Good to go. All right. So with that, thanks, everybody. We'll talk to y'all later and have a great evening.